This is J. Krishnamurti's first public discussion in London, 1962.
I think this morning we're going to discuss, and I think we ought to be very clear what we mean by discussion. I feel it would be worthwhile if we could, in exchange of words, see clearly the pattern of our own thinking, to expose ourselves, not to another, but to ourselves, to see actually what we are and what is actually taking place. I feel a discussion would be worthwhile if we could treat it as a mirror in which we see ourselves without distortion, clearly, in detail, taking the whole picture, not merely looking at any particular fragment. If we could do that, which is quite an arduous task, because most of us distort what we see through either pleasure or pain. If we could see ourselves in full measure, then I think this discussion, and I believe there is another next following Sunday, would be worthwhile. And it would be a pity, I think, if we merely remained at the verbal level or the intellectual level and not go very deeply, which most of us are apt to do. Because we do think in fragments. We never do anything totally, completely. We function at different levels and not as a total human being, aware inwardly of all the implications. And I would think this kind of meeting, though there are a lot of people to discuss really, which is almost impossible, if we could go beyond the verbal level, the mere intellectual exchange, and penetrate deeply into the unconscious and go beyond, then I would think this kind of gathering would eminently be useful. So, what shall we discuss?
You speak of seeing and hearing the fact. Would you please deal with gradualism? Is it a process of investigation? Is it a necessary process?
The question is seeing a gradual process, a matter of time? an analytical examination, or is it an immediate perception, an immediate see? Shall we discuss that? Is that a vital problem, a problem that we want to go into? You know, the more civilization seems to advance outwardly, go to the moon, Venus and Mars, have prosperity, and so on, the more complex the human problems are becoming. Not the outward living, not where one should live, what kind of job one should have, how much money and so on, so on. That are all fairly easy things to come by or to manipulate or work for. But the psychological problems are becoming much more strenuous, much more deep, or perhaps they've always been deep, but one is becoming more aware, having settled the outward things more or less easily and conveniently, then we're turning perhaps inwardly, but I doubt it. But there are these problems. And we shouldn't add, if I may say so, to the problems that we have already, another problem. What is seeing and making an extraordinary issue out of it. We have sufficient number of problems. And please don't add this question of seeing, listening, another problem. I hope I'm making myself clear. You see, to listen, to see, listen to not only what is being said, to listen to the neighbor, to your husband, wife, to a bird, to see a flower, both botanically and not botanically, to see things, and to listen to the propaganda of the church, of the state, of the newspaper, to listen to all this. The incessant impregnation of propaganda on the radio. To be aware of all that. To listen to it without being influenced, one way or the other. Because we are very easily influenceable. Our whole psychological structure is built on influence, on propaganda. You are British, Catholic, Protestants, Americans, Hindus, and so on. The result of 10,000 or 2,000 or 1,000-year propaganda. We are influenced. The food we eat, the climate we live in, the clothes we wear, the books we read, the newspapers, everything influences us incredibly. Either that influence is conscious or unconscious. They have tried various experiments in America, I believe, subliminal propaganda, which is appealing directly to the unconscious, without the consciousness taking it in. Throw on the screen an advertisement, which the conscious mind doesn't take in hardly, but the unconscious has seen it already. The next time you go into the shop, you buy what they say. Actually, we are the result of this extraordinary influence. And it seems to me intelligence is that quality which, being aware of every influence, at least as many as possible, to walk through them all without being entangled, without being twisted, impregnated by them, to see them, to see the influence and avoid it, or rather intelligently be aware of it and throw it off. And that seems to me the essence of intelligence. So, to listen to the propaganda, to what is being said now, and to see what is true and what is false, not according to your like and dislike, evaluation, which is merely cultural conditioning, but to see the fact as it is. Surely to listen, to see, and the seeing and the listening is an immediate thing, not of time, surely. We think understanding, don't we, is come by comparative evaluation. Is understanding comparative or immediate? I understand something, or I don't understand it at all. So I say to myself, I will gradually understand what is being said, or I will understand this in some future time. Will future tomorrow bring understanding? Until there is a radical change in my outlook, in my approach, in my listening, tomorrow will not help me. I either throw off my conditioning, my prejudices, my like and dislike, my evaluation now immediately, but I can't throw it off tomorrow. It will still be there. I think it is, if I may say so, a lazy mind that has this idea of gradualism. Eventually, we'll get it, but not now. Surely that is a lazy mind that thinks that way. I'm talking the psychological fact, not the mechanical acquisition of knowledge. That will take time. To learn a language will take time. To know about machinery, mathematics, and so on, so on, so on, all that, mechanical stuff. But to see something immediately psychologically, to see immediately that one is what? Acquisitive. That is fairly, that perception is immediate. And to listen to something, to listen to everything, not just to the speaker alone, but to everything, without distortion, without interpretation, without the whole mechanical process of thought interfering, to look, to listen. If you have tried, you will see how not only I was going to use the word difficult, but it isn't in the accepted sense of the word difficult. It requires tremendous energy. You know, to live with something very ugly in an ugly street, without a tree, going every day by a bus to your office, with the noise, with the smell, with the ugliness of cities. To live with that, one must have a great deal of energy not to let it corrupt, not to let it influence, not to make that make us insensitive, not to get used to it. And equally to live with something very beautiful, a mountain with a tree, with a beautiful face. Also requires a great deal of energy. Because we get so quickly used to it. In the same way, to listen, to see, you need energy of attention. And attention isn't just a matter of putting few things together and controlling oneself. It isn't that at all. You need attention to listen. And I hope all this, my talking, is not making the problem, is not creating it into a problem. If it becomes a problem, then please just drop it. Then it isn't worth it. Because God knows we have got so many problems. Don't add this to the existing ones. I hope I made the problem clear. What's up?
Is it possible to speak?
Do?
Is it possible for us to speak now?
I can't hear.
As a carrying on with the discussion, is it possible for us to say something now?
Yes, of course, sir. I finished.
In the effort to be see, listen, try to be free from prejudice, impartial, one does sometimes seem to fall into conditions, take conditions where this is achieved. There's the background of it all. There's a constant hope that one might find a place to rest, or a square where one can sit down, or where one might have some kind of permanence. Yet all the time one continually falls back into the other condition, and then having to make considerable efforts of energy again. It is always like this, always
Right.
always like this.
So may I say something? Please make your questions short, if you don't mind, because I have to repeat it, because everyone doesn't hear it. The questioner asks, one may, please correct me, sir, if I'm mistaken. One may listen, see, and get somehow disentangled from various complications and problems. But behind all this, there is an urge for some kind of permanency, not this everlasting struggle, some kind of resting place, and not the battle of coming and going. Is that right, sir? I wonder why we want permanency. Surely that is the reaction to conflict. I am in constant state of wanting and not wanting, going and coming, despair and hope. A battle is going on. A war is going on within me all the time. And I want some peace, some resting place, some God who will give me complete rest from this battle, from fulfilling and the despair of not fulfilling, from loving and not being loved, and so on, the whole business of it. And the search for permanency is a reaction to the conflict. We'll discuss a little later if there is a permanency or not, but first we must be clear that we want peace because we are in battle. We are in conflict. If there was no conflict at all, then we wouldn't seek a permanency. Right, sir? Now, the question is how to free the mind from conflict of every kind. Then we will discuss, go into, if there is a permanency. Permanency of the soul, the permanency of something beyond, and so on, so on, so on. Is it possible to be free from conflict? Or is life meant to be a perpetual struggle? From the moment we're born till we die. If we say it is inevitable, struggle, conflict, contradiction, the pain of the opposites, if we say that is inevitable and accept it as inevitable, then the problem is to make it as mild, as gentle, as refined as possible. Which is what most cultures try to do. So we must be very clear whether we are trying to refine the conflict or whether we are trying to find out to eliminate conflict altogether. And we're talking of psychological conflict which later projects conflict in the world, between nations, between groups, between races, between countries, the whole business of it. So to discuss this fairly clearly, you must be very clear in yourself whether struggle is inevitable, conflict inside, between death and living, between love and hate, between losing and gaining, between hate, the unconscious struggles that are going on. If it is inevitable, then there is only one thing can be done: to refine it. But to me, refinement of the conflict within still maintains, however subtly, conflict. And conflict is, at least for me, is very destructive. It makes the mind stupid, dull. However refined that conflict may become, however sophisticated, however learned, however analyzed and explained and reasoned away, it makes the mind incapable to go beyond itself. I think that's fairly clear without much explanation. Then the question is how to be free from conflict. Not the method, not the system. Then you're caught in the system. Again begins between what you should be and what you are. Again becomes a conflict. I don't know if I'm going too fast. So the question is really whether it's possible to eliminate altogether conflict. For me, the elimination of conflict is absolutely essential. Not because I'm a lazy person or temperamentally inactive, but I see what conflict does. Outwardly, one can see it very well what it does. The competition between the various commercial groups, as the English in the common market. The wars between this country and that country. You can see what it does outwardly. And inwardly, it is much worse. Because where there is conflict, there is a tension. And that tension produces certain activities which may express itself as surrealism or objectivism or non-objectivism, or you might be able to write a book or end up in an asylum. All that's implied in the conflict which creates a tension. And we have been brought up, we have been educated from childhood to compete. Our examinations, getting marks in the school, the whole process. And we have been bred on that. Wanting psychologically more, using function to acquire more status. and one can see what it does. It really makes the mind grow old. It makes the mind insensitive, dull. Like an ambitious man who is everlastingly in conflict. He doesn't know a moment of peace. He doesn't know ever what love is. He can't. And we have been brought up on that. I can go more in detail into the whole psychology of conflict, the anatomy of it, and see how unconsciously, deeply it is rooted in us. More knowledge, being more intelligent, becoming more beautiful, all that implies conflict at different levels, superficially or very deeply. Now the question is it possible to live in this world psychologically and therefore outwardly without any conflict? Please don't agree or disagree. Don't say it's not possible. Or say it is possible. You don't know. We are looking at the fact. For me it is. That isn't a fact for you. Do you have to find out? Now, is it possible to eliminate totally, not partially, little bits at a time in fragments, but totally end conflict? That is, to have no past. That's not to say, well, I'm going to be something tomorrow. To end conflict implies this whole intention, motive of arriving somewhere, achieving something, achieving fame, virtue, putting away anger in order to be more peaceful, destroying this whole idea of the ideal and the ideals. All this is not just a child's play. It requires a great deal of understanding, looking. So, psychologically, to end conflict is to be nothing. And most of us can't face that idea of being nothing. Literally being nothing. But after all, what are you? Huh? What are all the VIPs and all the big ones? And all the little ones? Strip them of their titles, positions, and all the rubbish, and they're nothing. And we are also, I'm afraid, big ordinary people. We're trying to become something. Inwardly, we're absolutely nothing. And why not be that nothing? Be nothing, not try to become nothing. Because then that becomes another problem, how to be nothing. No, this is a very, very serious thing. It is not just a matter of exchange of few words and listening to few ideas. To be really nothing implies tremendous inward meditation. That is real meditation. We won't discuss that for the moment. And when conflict totally ceases, then there is quite a different movement. So, the seeing of the fact of being nothing immediately and not maintain it. Because if you are nothing, you are nothing. You don't have to maintain it. It is the idea that you must maintain it that creates conflict. And therefore you're back again. Then there is the question if there is anything permanent. Is there anything permanent? What do we mean by permanency? This building will last 100 years unless it's destroyed by fire, by a bomb, by this or by that. Do we want such permanency psychologically? Permanent of what we are, with all our struggles, our mediocrity, with our pettiness, with our despairs, anguish, guilt. And you say, well, that's only on the surface. We must go beyond it. And going beyond is to find something permanent. So we say, desire to have something permanent. So we create the soul as being something permanent. Heaven, God, Jesus, an idea, a belief, the church. But is there anything permanent? Or, as one looks at it, investigates it, understands it, there is nothing permanent, outwardly or inwardly. Biologically, we're changing every minute, every day, every 7 years, our blood undergoes a change. But psychologically, intellectually, we cling to certain ideas. No bomb can destroy those ideas. You are British for the rest of your life, or a Catholic. Nothing will shake that. That is permanency. And, as we said, if permanency is merely a reaction to the contradiction, to the conflict, then what is there? If everything is in flux, is in a movement, flowing, ceaselessly, then how can my mind which is being nurtured on time, on recognition, how can that mind appreciate or know there's something which is beyond time, which has no limit, no borders, no recognition? I hope I'm making myself clear of this. You see, for us, if we are at all religious, God is the permanent entity, something everlasting to everlasting. But we are not religious, we substitute the state or an idea or an utopia or something or other. It's the same thing, whether it's in Russia or in Rome. Is it not possible, sirs, to psychologically step out of time, not think at all in permanency or impermanency, to live in the sense to be so completely attentive, to be so completely out of time that tomorrow or yesterday all the memories, all the agonies are dead. Have I answered the question, sir? No, because you see, there is, to a very serious problem like this, there is no answer as yes or no. There is a process of inquiry which reveals what is true and what is false. The revelation, the seeing, is much more important than finding an answer. There is no answer to any problem, psychological problem. There are answers to mechanical problems. But to investigate, to go into it very deeply, so that as you look, as you investigate, as you see, the thing disappears, it's no longer a burden, you're out of it. Your whole process of thinking, as we know, comes to an end, and then there is perhaps something totally new. Have you answered your question, sir? What's that? The gentleman says he hasn't anything to carry away with him. I beg your pardon, Albert.
I'm so sorry, but I'm sure there are many of us here who are not deaf and who want to hear every word without too much effort.
All right.
Thank you.
I'll speak much louder. The gentleman said he has nothing, after this discussion about permanency and conflict, he has nothing to take away with him. So, this isn't the merchandise that you're buying. We are talking together to see the thing, problem, as totally as possible together. You're not listening to me in order to learn from me. You're listening to yourself to find out about yourself. Because self-knowledge, self-knowing is far more important than to caress an idea of another home and to live with that idea. What we just now discussed about conflict and permanency is a self-revelatory, self-understanding process. If the explanation is merely verbal, then you have nothing left. Then you go away saying, what did that man talk about? But if in the discussion you are seeing the whole process of your own thinking, of your own being, of your own effort, then you will have opened the door to immense you nothing. There is no question of something giving you and you taking home. Am I talking louder? All right.
Sir, if it were possible to achieve this, say, freedom from conflict, what would one do with one's time and energy? I mean, one's spare time and energy.
That's not too long because
It's just a brief explanation of the question. And first and foremost, at the moment, quite a lot of spare time, which I have in the past wanted to devote, say, to animal welfare or philosophy. But you have convinced me that these things are symptoms of this conflict and are not really worthwhile. I wonder what one should do with one's energy.
all right, sir. The gentleman wants to know what to do with one's energy if one doesn't use it in social work, animal welfare, doing good, and so on. There is energy if there is no conflict, obviously. Much more energy. What do you do with that energy? You know, one can put the right question to get the right answer. Or one can put the wrong question which will bring about what apparently may be a right answer, but a wrong answer. Now, is this the right question? If I have no conflict at all, and therefore an astonishing amount of energy, that is a fact, isn't it? Because most of our energy is dissipated in conflict. In battle with ourselves, with our neighbors, with society, with gods and priests, with politicians and public, that. If that ends, what happens to our energy? What happens? Are you waiting for me to answer it? I'm sorry, I can't hear. I'm sorry. No, that is the question, sir. That's really the question. Now we dissipate our energy in conflict. Whatever little energy one has, it is dissipated. Now when that conflict, if it ever comes to an end, which you will find out for yourself, what happens to all this energy? Now, what do we mean by energy? We know the energy created by conflict. When I'm ambitious, I drive myself. I keep on struggling to achieve. And that brings certain quality of energy. A ruthlessness, the whole thing involved in it. When that ambition ceases totally, there is an energy which is not comparable to the energy of conflict. Obviously, the energy of tension, the energy of hate is not comparable to the energy of affection. If affection or love is not the opposite of hate, perhaps then one may go to the office and spend little energy there, in that terrible, boring, routine affair. And you may expend that energy in a totally different way. You see, I don't want to enter into that speculative. No, for me, it is not a speculative thing. It will become speculative to you, unreal. Then I'm talking about something of which you may or may not know. See, then, what's the good of my talking about it? I'll show you something. Most of us are insensitive. Or sensitive to beauty and struggle to put away ugliness. But if there was no conflict, as being sensitive and not being sensitive, but being sensitive, which is also the expression of energy, then everything becomes alive. Every color is not red, blue, or white, but it is a burning, furious color. Then every thought, every feeling is burnt out. I don't know, I can. And if that energy is not tied to any particular form, a particular demand, as most of our energies are, my wife, my house, my children, my country, my God, my belief, my job, my. Then that energy is total stillness. And in that stillness there is a tremendous movement. Not of time, not of from here to there, it's a movement. And I feel that is creation, that is God, or whatever name you like to give to it. But every form of struggle, every form of conflict, every demand to become something, every experience which creates further demand for more experiences, all that must come to an end. And that's why self-knowing is absolutely important.
It seems to me that the moment the word I enters, there is a problem. And that then this I gets to work to try to solve a problem which is the object. Is not the I the only problem?
Yes, sir. The gentleman says it's not the I the only problem. Obviously, it is. As long as there is a center, there is a circumference, which is time. And the question then is it possible, living in this world, with all the chaotic demands which the I has created, my country, my God, my family, my insurance, my mortgage, the thing the I, every human being is caught in, is it possible? Not theoretically, but actually, like a surgeon operating on cancer, actually to wipe it out. Is it possible? To have a house, to have wife and children, to live in a country, perhaps even having a mortgage, living in this world, is it possible to have no center? To dance through life without pain, is it possible?
It's not habit that is the problem. We tend to perpetuate all these things through habit.
Is not habit a problem? Obviously, sirs. But habit is mechanical, and our thinking is mechanical. We are British and will be British for the rest of our life. We are Catholics and Saviour and the Mass and the confession that follows. I am a Hindu, and for the rest of my life I am a Hindu. Habit. Going to the office, looking at the same face, having the same pleasure. You know, the terrible tyranny of habit, smoking, drinking, sex. That habit is, in essence, the I, the me, the bundle of memories. That is me. Now, to drop that totally, living in this world, is it possible? Again, don't say it is or it is not. One has to investigate, one has to be aware, one has to go into it, not with despair, with hope of ending it or not ending it, but to uncover it. And I said, it can be done, it must be done, otherwise life is so sordid. You may write a poem, you may be a great man, a good job, a lovely house, and a nice wife, children, and all the business. But you're still within the man-made house and not capable of going beyond. That's why, sir, you can put questions, but we come back to the same thing over and over and over again, which is your own capacity to look, to listen, to find out. And this capacity is not to be cultured, to be nurtured, to be developed. Because the moment you develop something, it becomes a habit. Then it becomes a knowledge to which you refer to always. So the thing is really very subtle, demands an attention which is, which is burning all the time. And now, wait a minute. When I use the word all the time, I mean by that not a continuous thing, but to be picked up. From time to, doesn't matter if you drop it, but pick it up. And then examine why you dropped it. So that your mind is active, alive. Never letting a thought, a feeling slip by. Beg pardon, Sarika? When there is no I, the question asks, what is listening then? What is it that listens? When there is no I, what is it that listens? Then do you listen at all if there is no I? Is there need to listen? Un moment. I mean. First of all, do we listen? Or the I prevents listening? The I being the habit, the memories, the condemnations, the justifications, that prevents listening. And when there is no I, what is there need to listen? You see, this becomes a theoretical question to answer. When you are a total human being, without conflict, without time, without habit, without all the contradictions of our life, a complete human being, then you are living, aren't you? Then you can say, what is it that lives? There is no it that lives. You are living. Living without time. I don't know if you ever gone into that question of time. Perhaps it may not be the occasion. So, when you die to everything that you know, then you might say, what is there? If all my yesterdays are gone, all my tomorrow is gone, the future, and also the present in the sense of time, the now, what is there? Now, how can I answer you? Verbally, I can say there is something something tremendous, something terribly alive there. But that will have no meaning at all. You might say, well, how am I to get it? Or you are talking up nonsense. All right. But I think the question really is it possible to eliminate the I? If we could work on that, then you will answer your own question. You're going to say something. The lady asked, how am I not to be contaminated? Because I am contaminated. I am contaminated. And how am I, who am contaminated, to be free of contamination? That's right? Surely the problem is not how to be free of contamination. Then you create another conflict, another problem. But the me is contaminated by society, it is the contamination. Not I am contaminated, it is the thing that has been contaminated. It is the thing that has been put together through conflict, through envy, through ambition, through power, through agony, guilt, despair. That is me. How is that? Me to dissolve itself without conflict. So these are not a theoretical, theological questions. I mean, if one is serious at all with oneself, one sees whatever effort I make, whatever thing I do has a motive, is the result of a reaction. Every thought builds its own limitation. Every experience corrupts its own state. What is to be done? That's why I said from the beginning, to see the fact and not do a thing about it. To see the fact that every thought, every feeling is the result of society with its ambitions, with its greeds, envies. That is me. To see that in its entirety, the very act of seeing is its dissipation, not you have to dissipate it. The very act of seeing something poisonous, is the leaving it alone. Would you say is effort destructive? That's what I've been saying all the morning. See, I wonder why it's so difficult to understand something very simple. If two people quarrel, there is no peace. If two nations, as separate nations, make peace and all the rest of treaties, they can't live together because they are nationalistic. With their sovereign governments, with their pride, with their being a Frenchman and an Englishman, all the blasted nonsense. To wipe out all that doesn't require effort just to see it, how stupid it is. You can't criticize the Queen, but you can criticize Christ. That's what is happening in this country. And the absurdity of it. No? You follow how limited our minds are. How petty. And that pettiness tries to alter something else. Tries to bring about a revolution in itself. Pettiness trying to bring a tremendous revolution. How can it? The revolution which it has brought about will still be petty, shallow, empty, dull, stupid. Just to see that. And when you see it, there is a totally different action, not brought about by your demand, by your urge. That's why there is a negative approach and a positive approach. The negative approach is not the approach as the opposite of the active. It is negation. You understand what I'm saying? You know, we say no. The no is a reaction to yes. But there is a denial, saying no, which is not of reaction at all. It's 12:15. I hope you have also worked and not merely listened to the speaker.
I find it impossible to be aware
The lady says she finds it impossible to be aware all the time. Don't be aware all the time. Just be aware a little bit. There is no all the time, please. That's a dreadful idea, to be aware all the time. It's a nightmare. Because you see, this terrible desire for continuity. Just to be aware for 1 minute, for 1 second. In that awareness of 1 second, you see the whole universe, if you can. That is not a poetic phrase. To be aware for a minute. Because you see, you can only see things in a flash. Just to see things in a movement. And having seen, we want to hold it, capture it, give it a continuity. That's not being aware at all. When you say, I must be aware all the time, then you have created a problem of all time. Then you should really examine why you want to be aware all the time. The greed, the desire to acquire. And to say, well, I am aware all the time, it means nothing. You know what love is? Is it for all the time like a marriage? Like marriage, forever and ever? Are marriages forever and ever? You know that better than I do. And is love forever and ever? Or something that is stripped of time? Perhaps we can discuss this another time. The gentleman says, it's 12:15, I said it's 12:15, and that chronological time binds us. Isn't it possible to have an organization, he suggests, where you can meet every day and carry on? If you want to say, I have an organization, I'm out of it. If you want to meet with several others, meet. You don't have to ask my permission. But we are bound by time. You have to catch the bus, you have lunch, you have an appointment this afternoon, you have to see people, and so on, so on. We are bound chronologically by time, by the watch. I have to leave this country in such and such a date. That's obvious. But we are not talking of that. I explained that very carefully at the beginning. though one may have to keep an appointment at 3 o'clock, to be psychologically free of that time of 3 o'clock. Perhaps we shall continue this on Tuesday, shall we? This kind of, oh no? Tuesday, that is, day after tomorrow. Shall I talk, or do you want me to discuss as we do now? Beg pardon? You want to do both?